it's almost like a toggling between like the Pisces Aries continuum of death and rebirth, letting go and being reborn. All of that carries us through overall through 2025, and 2026 is like, okay, here we go. And I do think 2026, we are going to see more of that, less of the victim consciousness.
This podcast is called Reconditioned because this is the place where you'll learn how to truly recondition your entire life. Where other wellness podcasts or platforms focus on one particular area of wellness or inner growth, Reconditioned is a one-stop shop for all of it, so that you can get all the information you need to heal and up-level the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of your life in one place. Because that's what I needed when I was healing from the arthritis I had from the age of 2 that left me disabled by 18. I got myself to a place of complete wellness after a very long journey of immersion into the world of healing, where I learned how to heal the whole self. My purpose now is about bringing that to you, and my Rise membership is an extension of that. For women who want to take their wellness and growth to the next level, there really is nothing out there like it. You'll be part of a global community of like-minded women with access to 14 modules that literally take you through everything you ever need to learn in order to bring your life to a place of balance and abundance. With group coaching calls with me, personalized support, community book club, and so much more. Rise becomes part of your life, your lifestyle, enabling you to thrive in the ways you always dreamed, with me right there beside you, championing you through your journey. It's not always open for enrollment, so if you're hearing this now, it's open and ready for you to enroll. Just go to the show notes for the link or visit laurenvakneen.co.uk/rise. Welcome back to Reconditioned with me, Lauren Vakneen, and today our annual astrological projections for the following year, which I do with my good friend Dani Beinstein. And I love these episodes because she's not just an astrologer, she's like a psychological, spiritual astrologer, but with such a deep rooting in psychology, in history, in understanding of the nature of what it means to exist in form on the earth, not just kind of the very spiritual, esoteric nature of astrology, but what it means for us living here. So, and she and I have so many similarities and such a deep connection. And so these episodes are always such a tonic for me. I just so enjoy recording them and getting her guidance on how to manage the astrological changes and goings on of the year ahead and what we should be expecting and what we can look out for. And so she gives some really good nuggets about that and kind of quarter by quarter what we can be expecting, and then kind of summarizes it all at the end, which is gorgeous. And we're both book lovers, bookworms, so we always have our out there at the end of the discussion our favorite books from the year. So if you are a bookworm like us, do hang around till the end to get that, but if not, just listen to the astrology part. That's also good. So this will be the last episode that comes out for 2024. It's not the end of the season actually, but I'm holding off on releasing the final few episodes of the season until January, because I just feel like I know I want to slow down over the holidays. I know I don't want an overload of information. And when I was thinking about, do I just release them because some people want something to do over the holidays and want to listen to podcasts, I actually don't. So I'm kind of projecting that energy out there of you slowing down and stopping to take in so much information. Stop putting so much information your way all the time. Just take a break and just be and ground into the slowness of the solstice, winter solstice, which invites us to just be slow, hibernate and be, and kind of ground into all the earth offers us in those cold months. So that's what I'm doing. So this will be the last episode until the first Tuesday in January, something like that, first or second Tuesday in January, and then we are back after that towards the end of Jan with the most incredible season. please make sure you're subscribed, because the guests I have for next season are quite something, and so many surprises for you. So wishing you a most fabulous end to 2024. And I hope you experience gentle, slow, nourishing holidays, including whatever you celebrate, and your entry into 2025, which for me doesn't feel like a new year, because, you know, spring is really the new year. But for the purposes of the Gregorian calendar and our attachment to it, I wish you a very beautiful, nourishing entry into 2025. May it bring you everything you need, because what we want isn't always what we need. But may it be, nourishing for you. And thank you for sticking with me this year, and for being here to learn and grow and evolve with me, and sending in all your messages about what you enjoy about this podcast. Please keep doing that. I really enjoy hearing what you enjoy and what you want more of. And I'm so glad to have been able to serve you in some small way this year. So thank you. And here is my episode with Dani Beinstein on astrological projections for 2025. So I am back with my good friend Dani Beinstein, who is astrologer extraordinaire and so much more than that. And we do this every year, and it's so much fun. And it's probably my favorite conversation of the year on the podcast. So welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. I love these, and I so look forward to them. And I cannot believe a year has passed.
I literally can't believe that a year has passed. And more so than the year before. But this year, I remember the exact conversation we had in last year's one. And it feels like maybe it was 6 months ago at best. But I cannot believe it's been a year.
It's pretty wild.
So we do talk about astrological projections for the new year, but we also talk about like our favorite books of the year and all the other stuff that makes us tick. So how you been this year?
You know, I'm good. This has been a year of real settling in and nesting. And I've really enjoyed it, because I also am aware of what's coming in 2025, which is definitely an acceleration energetically for all of us. So, you know, we've been in this outer planet, earth and water focus for a long time now. And, you know, I think certainly in like the health space, the wellness space, the spiritual space, there has been, you know, all these different factions of that kind of exploding, right? And we've already started the process, but 2025 is really going to kick it up, of moving much more into fire and air. And by in 2026, we will be, you know, deeply in fire and air. And there is a feeling of acceleration. So depending on our makeup, and then, of course, the context of our lives, where we live, what's happening, how the energy hits those places, you know, will be impacted, of course. But there feels like there is a speeding up of time, speeding up of technology, speeding up of time, and also more of a focus, less of a focus on the material. Ironically, even though we've had this focus on the spiritual in much of the conversation in, let's say, social media has been about getting, accumulating, right? What do I want to get? And when we are in fire and air, it's much more experiential and learning oriented, and less about just what am I going to get, and more about how am I going to participate. Does that make sense?
A lot. I'm really interested for you to open up what this means about acceleration, because you mentioned kind of an acceleration of time. I think that because as humans we have a perception of linear time,
Yes,
we can get lost in that idea of time is time. There are a certain amount of minutes in an hour, a certain amount of hours in the day. However, I think that time actually changes. But what do you mean by an acceleration? To me, it feels like time is actually speeding up.
Yes. So I'm so glad you brought that forward, because you might hear a lot of people on the interwebs use jumping timelines as a phrase. That's what I mean. It's like there is a feeling that we are almost in a different reality. And the shift from one reality to the next, that is speeding up. Now, there's also a thing, you have children, right? It's like, wait, I don't understand. How did they grow so fast? There's that reality of, as we get older, time does feel like it speeds up, even linear time. But our relationship to the world around us, our relationship to things changing, that is speeding up.
Right.
Right? So during the pandemic years, there was a lot of collective energy that was sprouting. That is now spinning every which way outward. And our relationship to the world around us has shifted and will continue to shift enormously from, let's say, where we were in 2019. 2019, Uranus moved into, Uranus is the planet of change. Not so much slow transformative change. That's Pluto. We can get to that. That just moved into Aquarius from 16 years in Capricorn. Uranus is disruptive and lightning speed. A bit whiplash, right? So Uranus has been moving through Taurus, the fixed earth sign, since 2019. In 2025, it moves into Gemini. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, which is the winged messenger, which governs conversation, communication, thought, exchange of ideas, right? Uranus is thought to be a higher octave of Mercury. How we share information, how we change information, how we exchange information, all of that is going to go through a revolutionary period. How we take in information, how we disseminate information. It's been in Taurus, so we've seen disruption in farming. We've seen all things Taurian. We've seen disruption in farming, disruption in food production, disruption in the beauty standards that we've held, in the beauty industry, in land, right? How the earth is shifting. All of that is Uranus in Taurus. But Uranus in Gemini starts to move into Gemini July 7th. It'll be there from July 7th to November 7th, and then April 25th of 2026, it'll then land in Gemini until 2032. So, we're dealing with the acceleration in that way of information, how information is shared.
I mean, it's been such an acceleration anyway. So
yes.
What does that mean for us on an individual level? Like, what are we going to feel? Because already life feels so quick. everything is so fast. Yes, and I want to slow down.
Yes, I hear that, because we've been holding it as discordant, right? It's like how can I use words to describe this? So part of the reason things feel like they're speeding up and not like we are speeding up in our growth with it is because of the earth element, which is dense. Our human bodies are earth and water, right? So the acceleration being filtered through our own density makes it feel as if it's speeding up faster than we want. But if we have been doing the work of clearing out some of the density, it won't feel like, oh, it's speeding up and I want to slow down, because it won't feel like our relationship to our environment will match more of the speed. It's our relationship to the issue is the issue. If we are open to our own shift in consciousness, it won't feel like such an acceleration, even if it is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, or is that too esoteric?
No, that makes so much sense, because I notice, for example, I mean, everything's energy and resonance, right? So whatever you're giving out, you're going to get back. Yes. And I notice that despite how busy I am, when I make the choice to do things that fill me up or things that I know are more important to me, there seems to still be time for that without me feeling like I'm losing my head, like without me doing like, oh, I'm just fitting it all in and going to bed at 1 and I don't, I go to bed at like 8 p.m. I fit everything in, you know? So it feels like, I mean, you know, the way I've always explained it is time expands when we do. And I think that is very true. And I know that is super esoteric and really hard sometimes to understand, but like if we're in alignment with the stuff that we're doing, as opposed to just, you know, living the life of stagnation where we're just plodding and kind of going along, you know, with emotions, what we should do, but we're in alignment, then it kind of expands and everything just fits. And then it feels less like an acceleration that we're resisting.
That's
and
right.
more like, is that, So
that's exactly what I'm saying.
A lot. Yeah.
Now you asked me, how are we going to feel about it? This is dependent on our natal makeup, because you're a Pisces, I'm a Virgo. We're both mutable. We are more adaptable in our, you know, we have to take in the whole chart into consideration in the layers of the chart. But those who hold energy in a way where they're more resistant, or let's say they have a lot of earth. I also have a lot of earth, right? There may be challenges in that way.
Right. So like a Taurus might find it more if you've got like Taurus in your sign, especially in your sun.
Sure. Yes. But if you're Taurus, you've had Uranus on your sun at some point, and that has prepared you for some of it, because it's broken up some of that stuckness, because there's been some need to shift or upgrade or update one's thinking. Okay. But, you know, with Uranus and Gemini, there's going to be more information thrown at us at lightning speed. Now, you and I are both people who receive information from alternative sources. Fair to say?
No, never.
So we may be less surprised by information that is released or revealed, or ideas that are released or revealed.
I feel like that's already started, no?
It depends what environment you're in and who you're talking to.
Right. Yeah. Because, you know, if you look back a few years ago to think about, I mean, I've been talking the last few months about this, and this feels like an acceleration to me. So maybe I'll pick up on this and see what you think about this. The things I've been talking about on social media for 15 years that got me shadow banned and kicked off and made people literally go, this woman is crazy. I can't be friends with her. Like people on Facebook, like personal people on Facebook, like I'm talking 15 years ago, like she's crazy. She's going to make our kids sick. Everyone's going to die because of her. Yeah. The information, that sort of information is now coming from every source. Like, all right, it's not on CNN, but it's coming from every source. And I'm like, everyone's sharing this stuff now. This is crazy.
And it's starting to hit CNN. That is the jumping timelines.
Right.
That is what I'm referring to. And that is furthered by Pluto having just moved into Aquarius, so Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008. And since then we've had, you know, I'll speak for America, because America, I know it's such a complex, you know, nation and so giant people forget that you can fit basically all of Western Europe and Texas, right? It's massive. But we've had a breakdown of institutional integrity with Pluto and Capricorn. Mm-hmm. Now there is an acceleration of the people. We are in a populist era. Whatever you think of it, whatever you're, that's what's happening. We are in a populist era, right? People are sick of seeing resource rich individuals in a concentrated area. And since the beginning of time, this is what happened. Mm-hmm. Literally 250-year cycles, right in line with Pluto. This is what we see throughout history, right?
Like a revolution.
Literally, that is it, right? So the last time Pluto was in Aquarius was both the American and the French revolutions.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And this feels like a revolution. It's just more subtle. We're not bashing down the doors of, the French palace, but it's happening. Yeah, it's right. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It depends on how politics is a horseshoe. So you may find allegiances in funny places as time moves on, right? Mm-hmm. And it's how it's dealt with, right? But there are I'm just going to say this neutrally, there are real trends in people taking their power back. We have some very recent instances where that's being done in a very scary way, where individuals are being targeted in a very scary way. But then there's also institutional collapse that can allow, if done judiciously, can allow for something to be built up. People forget that after the French Revolution came Napoleon. It wasn't all roses. Right. It was not all roses, right? Almost every revolution is followed by something that is not great for the collective. Yeah. So I don't know.
It's that polarity that people are looking for. They're like, I didn't like that, so this must be better because it's the opposite. And that's not, and I see this in, people, when I work with women, women often do this in relationships, broken up from someone that it didn't work for them. So they go for the exact opposite. And that, polarizing isn't good either. Right. We have to find the balance. So that makes a lot of sense.
So let's be hopeful and optimistic, right? That there is a more integrated, with less casualties, not just, death casualties, but less casualties across the board, that we have a real upgrade with minimum damage. Mm. That's the ideal situation versus some, lawless revolution.
Right.
Let's take what's happening in Syria. It's like it's two sides of the same coin.
Right.
So, here in the West, we have indications, certainly here in America, there is a populism that's rising, and then it's how that's dealt with. But with the fire and the air, you're going to see things changing quickly. It's why I was certain that Trump was going to win, because when I looked at the coalition, it felt very, very akin to the idea of going back to the Constitution. The American Revolution was based on the Declaration of Independence. And same with the French Revolution. You have this idea of liberty. What does it mean to be free? And this idea of meritocracy. In its, the idea is to move towards that. Mm. Right. And so clearing what's in the way of that. And Elon Musk, Pluto and Aquarius in a human.
Explain that.
Well, it's like, the whole idea of Aquarius rules technology and technological advancement. Pluto is power and transformation, literally using technology to transform our lives for good or ill. Mm. We just look at it neutrally. Mm. Mm. Right.
What I love about you and these conversations is often with astrology or anything, remotely esoteric, people can go so deep into that they then aren't rooted, and maybe this is your Virgo, and then they aren't rooted into, you know, the reality of what life is in form. And you always have such a deep connection to what's going on, and you understand politics, and you understand, you're so into history like me, you know, we like history buffs, and like you want to get to the root of what's actually going on, as opposed to this is what spirit's telling me, and this, you know, because there is there is a grounding that's needed to marry the two, because we are here in form, experiencing the human experience.
Yes. And it gets filtered through our density. And often what happens is people discount human nature. And, you know, it's the Locke-Hobbes debate. Like, are humans decent and naturally kind of equitable, or are they nasty, brutish, and short? You know, that kind of debate. But it often discounts political ideology that doesn't deal with issue by issue as it stands, often discounts human behavior. And it's interesting to me when people reify something like government, meaning if human nature is human nature, those who seek power, why wouldn't those who are in government want to maintain their power? Meaning, like, people think, oh, if we just grow government, it's somehow going to operate in a way that's of higher ideals. Says who since the beginning of time, right? So the whole impetus behind America, whatever people want or whatever their political ideology is, America was founded on the idea to have limited power in government.
What went wrong?
Well, that's it, right? What happened with antitrust laws? What happened, right? So you have two sides actually of the same coin, wanting things to be, wanting more availability for upward mobility. It's just an idea of how it's achieved. But that's a whole, so Pluto in Aquarius, you know, we see what's happening across Europe. We see that there is this idea of, okay, I've seen this power concentrated in the top globally. Different people of different nations want that power returned to them. That's on a 250-year Plutonic cycle. The other thing we're going to see in 2025 is both Saturn, which is a planet of responsibility and maturation and accountability, and Neptune, which is in some ways which is esoteric, mystical. Both are shifting into Aries. And actually February 2026, they will meet at Aries point, which is 0 degrees Aries. Aries is also governs war. Saturn is structures and order. Neptune dissolves. Neptune is mysticism. I think we are going to continue to see clash of civilization. That's just a reality. I mean,
until February 2026 or moving forward?
Maybe moving forward.
I know, interrupting an episode with an ad is so annoying, I know. But guys, I want to ask you not to fast forward this and listen for just 2 minutes, because there is a huge element of health optimization and reducing risk of illness that most people don't even realize. You need to be reducing artificial blue light in the home and get targeted red light on your body. The reason is because when the body registers blue light, your brain, based on evolution, assumes it's early daytime. But our brains in 2024 are registering blue light from our light bulbs and our screens at literally all hours, prompting our bodies to produce cortisol, the stress hormone, as well as other hormones we just shouldn't be producing at night. This affects our stress and anxiety levels, and it stops the cells in our bodies being able to repair and regenerate at night. And let me be clear, when our cellular health is compromised, we literally cannot stay healthy. And our amazing partner, Block Blue Light, have created some incredible light bulbs that allow you to switch between settings and have only amber light at night, which is what we kitted our whole house out with when we renovated a few years ago. And if you do need to work after dark, like I have to sometimes, Block Blue Light also have amazing blue light blocking red light glasses, some that fit over your usual glasses, and they can even custom make glasses with your prescription. They also have some of the most powerful and effective red light machines on the market, using photobiomodulation to help keep the mitochondria in your cells healthy, something we cannot be healthy without, as well as helping your body to produce more collagen for bones and joints and to keep skin looking great as you age. It also supports pain and recovery, and red light is said to reduce the risk of Alzheimer's because of how it impacts brain health. We can't control everything happening in this modern world that affects our health, but my personal motto is to mitigate where we can and put in place everything we can for the things we can control, and blue light is one of them. You can get a 10% discount across the range by visiting blockbluelight.co.uk and using the code LV10. Okay, back to the show. And how does just this is just a question that I have as you're talking that I wonder if other people have. It creates a collective energy in an individual level then. Does that, so just like the people in power or the people create, at the hands of war, is this literally affecting their thoughts and their decisions, these movements?
I think it's the way that I see it. I've always seen it the way ancient Greeks, when they wrote their plays, like the idea that it's a mix of fate and free will, and we have agency, but we also, in a way, don't. It's the degree of consciousness. And I think that there is also, it's Shakespearean, which drew from ancient Greece. It's the idea that we're all players on a stage and our egos get involved. But if we believe in past lives, which I think I do, I'm full of doubt because faith and doubt are interwoven, that it's like, what is the role that we were meant to play? What is in the unfolding of history? So there are figures who have mighty roles because they are known as, important historical figures, but then we all play our roles. You watch a movie about war in history. It's like, what are all the contextual elements that led that character to make those choices in that time? We tend to think we have tended to think that we are post-historical, or somehow we have some moral righteousness than those that preceded us. And that is a complete fallacy, as we've seen through the pandemic. It's a complete fallacy that we tend to think every era and in history, people have thought they are on the right side and not being on the right side. You don't know. Right? You don't know, like, what is the greater unfolding? And so the way that I've always looked at astrology is through that kind of witness consciousness lens. And then I make my personal decisions with as much integrity and humility, knowing I've already shifted my mind on so many things with the best available knowledge I have. But anytime I see a kind of righteousness, and again, righteous figures are needed on the stage. It's needed. So it's all how it plays out. But I think we have this tendency as humans to need certainty and to need to be right. But what if at the end of our lives, when we go wherever we're going, it's like, yeah, you played exactly the role you were meant to play. Even if that role was something that, through a certain lens, we would say, that's a negative force. I don't know.
Can we talk about what we're going to experience, like, on a kind of quarterly basis? Like, what's the first quarter of the year going to bring?
Well, okay, so this is interesting because the first, just over the first quarter, we have strong retrograde energy. So the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, those always go retrograde every year. but Venus and Mars do not. Mars is retrograde now, went retrograde on December 6th, starting in Leo and backing into Cancer. Right? It'll go forward February 23rd. A week later, on March 1st, Venus, so Mars is motivation, drive, animus, the masculine energy. Venus is attraction, feminine, resources, art, creativity. Venus goes retrograde a week later on March 1st in Aries, backtracks into Pisces, to 24 degrees Pisces. Both those retrogrades, and then 2 of the 3 Mercury retrogrades, start in fire and backtrack into water. So there are 3 Mercury retrogrades in 2025. Sometimes there are 4. So we have that happening, which is interesting because it's like collecting our emotional selves to take action from an inspired place. Because water is emotion and feeling, and fire is action.
So
that's
like a balance of those things, like a balance of the masculine, feminine. So
harmonization.
Harmonization of the masculine.
I like
feminine.
harmonization better than. And then very early in 2025. So the nodes, which are related historically to the idea of destiny or fate, right? When we tap into our North Node, we tap into energy that is about self-actualization. So the North Node shifts from Aries. So this is the only thing that's going into water. Aries to Pisces. That happens on January 11th. It'll stay there until July 26th of 2026. So with that, we have the eclipses, which have already started to move into Pisces and Virgo. So in the first quarter, March 13th, and then a little bit after, March 13th and March 29th are the first set of eclipses. September 7th and September 21st are the second and final set. So March and September are really significant. March 13th, that is a lunar eclipse in Virgo. March 29th is the final eclipse in the Aries Libra axis. That's in Aries. It's a solar eclipse in Aries. September 7th is a full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces. September 21st is a solar eclipse in Virgo.
Lots of stuff happening around both of our birthdays then.
Yes. Very much so. So that is interesting because that speaks to a deeper healing and surrender just as things are heating up.
Right.
So
So things are heating up and it's inviting us to surrender.
Yes.
Right.
Beautiful interpretation. Yes, exactly. To let go, to realize where we don't have control, because North Node to Aries is like, where am I going to take action? Where am I going to motivate? Pisces is like, where am I going to surrender to the greater cosmic whole? So that is interesting.
March.
Yeah. Well, the North Node moves into Pisces January 11th, but March is the first set of eclipses.
Right. Okay. So then what are we seeing kind of second quarter?
So second quarter is more about Saturn moves into Aries starting May 24th to September 1st. And then February of 2026, like I said, we have that Saturn Neptune conjunction. Uranus moves into Gemini July 7th to November 7th. And then again, April of 2026, all the way to 2032. Where we still have some water is that on June 9th, Jupiter, which is the planet of expansion and growth, that shifts from Gemini into Cancer from June 9th of 2025 to June 30th of 2026. So that is, I think we're going to see emphasis back on family, back on nurturing. But I mean, that's been, part of your work anyway. But I think in the collective, we are going to see an increase in, call it family values, family focus. Might see a lot of things in news around mothers, around pregnancy, around that kind of thing.
So moving kind of from individuation and that theme more into community again.
And emotional connection. So that, but then 2026, Jupiter will move into Leo, and then we're like all fire and air. Right. So that'll be and then Neptune starts its movement into Aries March 30th, October 22nd, and then we'll backtrack into Pisces, and then January 26th of 2026 till March of 2039. Because it takes about 165 years to run the zodiac. Neptune, which is the dreamer in Aries. So that's an interesting mix, because we're looking at putting our dreams into action. And Saturn gives us the kind of backbone to do that on a personal level, right? There's what's happening in the collective, and then there's what's happening on the personal level. But I think this idea that we are in a post-historical age, like I think it's left over from the 90s when things were pretty copacetic in the West overall, that like, oh, humans have evolved out of, no. Because we're here, we're incarnated, it's messy.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be I think 2025, it's also, and this is not my specialty, but it's a 9-year, which is a completion year in numerology.
Right. Oh, I see. Right.
Year. So 2026, when we have so much fire in the sky, fire and air in the sky, right? And it's a 1 year. That feels like a reset to me. Like a jump start. So it's almost like a toggling between like the Pisces Aries continuum of death and rebirth, letting go and being reborn. All of that carries us through overall through 2025, and 2026 is like, okay, here we go. And I do think 2026, we are going to see more of that, less of the victim consciousness that has permeated the collective, especially with Neptune in Pisces for so long, and then Saturn moving into Pisces, where there's some guardrails going up around victim consciousness, but it's going to be very out of vogue, I think, 2026 and moving forward.
God for that. I mean, it's killing me. It's killing me. It has become like a theme. It is on vogue to be in the victimhood of your label, of your chosen label, of a diagnosis, of any sort of label that gives you, this is my new identity, and I'm going to use this as part of my identity, and it's coming from, someone who speaks about wellness. For me, wellness is wholeness, and it is affecting people's wholeness.
Oh, 100%.
When they are diminishing their personal power by identifying with a label that is based 100%. On victim consciousness.
100%. So 2026.
And that's not very acceptable to say right now. So let's bring on 2026.
Yes. And it's just, you're just going to see more of that going out of vogue.
Okay, good.
But I think 2025 is transitional in a way between those, again, like polarization. How do we, some people have been victimized, but how does that help anyone to dwell in that? And I'm talking about like, someone who has had something horrible happen to them that was out of their control. But then it's like, what do you do with that? How do you transmute that?
Absolutely.
How do you create an offering out of that?
That's exactly it. Because the pattern we're seeing is, this has happened to me, and then everyone,
or not even happened to me. It's like, I'm going to create a victim consciousness out of something that didn't even happen. That just,
right.
I'm saying leads me to be a victim.
Yes. 100%. I know exactly what you're talking about. and it's this, the collective consciousness of it that, that supports these behaviors, because it's like, you know, even I talk a lot about kind of terminology around disease. So when, you know, I'm working with women, I don't let them call it my arthritis, my cancer, my diabetes. It's not yours. It doesn't define you. You don't own it. It's not part of you. It's just something that's here to teach you, and we're going to heal it and it's going to move on.
Yes.
And so it's like the terminology around survivor and warrior. And even that puts us into victim consciousness. I've never used that terminology, you know, lifetime of, you know, chronic disease, never used that terminology. And that's hard to get out of when the collective consciousness is focusing and putting a focus towards that.
And rewarding it. But
exactly.
The warrior is an interesting term because it is associated with Aries. Which
it's kind of misused because it's like it's maybe from a different perspective of survivor, but it's like I'm fighting something, and that again puts you into victimhood
and to againstness, right? I'm thinking of like in yoga, like peaceful warrior, or like
warrior poses are strong, right?
Yes,
but from a perspective of I'm an arthritis warrior, it's
no,
I'm fighting
I don't mean
something.
That. No. I mean more like possessing the capacity to utilize your skills at full capacity in the moment that they're needed versus living in a heightened state of battle.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, that's good news for me. So it makes my life easier.
So I think we'll see, you know, I definitely think we'll see some of that, but we're also going to see with that comes hot-headedness with a lot of fire, right? It's just, where is it coming from inside of us? And we are moving. So, you know, that whole thing about like the future is female, that doesn't really work with the energy that's incoming.
Right.
First of all, the energy is not one gender or another.
Right.
Or anything, right? It is hopefully humanity and the earth in accordance, not this idea that men are bad, which has been really toxic. I think people who have sons really see that the, you know, the emphasis has been, I mean, we see it, how it's played out for the past 2 decades, right? This idea, or more the idea. So I think we are going to see a return of more, let's say, more traditional masculine values. And when I say that, I do not mean 1950s, the men going to the work and women staying home in this really codified way. I mean, masculine qualities.
Right. The divine masculine.
Yeah. The divine masculine. Yeah. I think people hear that and they're like, they think of it as the man putting the woman down. I'm not talking about that at all.
Yeah.
In fact, true masculine energy can hold 4, right? So I think we're going to see an increase in that.
Great.
Start to show up in 2025, more in 2026. I think we're going to see different qualities and characteristics come into vogue in the collective.
From what you've just said about the masculine, I feel like I'm already seeing that start to make a transition. If I look at masculine figures who are honoring of the feminine, but deeply in their masculine. And that's the harmonization, as you say, you know, like people like Zach Bush talking about, you know, the feminine, you know, the feminine is what, you know, because we've always thought the masculine is the protector. And, you know, when I spoke to Zach, he was saying, you know, it's the feminine, it's the protector, because the feminine, you know, it's the feminine that has the first access to intuition and therefore protecting what's around her.
Yes.
Just having the masculine acknowledge that, to me, is a step in the right direction of the divine masculine, the positive masculinity, Bobby Kennedy, honoring of women, of women's experiences, of the mother's experience, of just the general, the feminine and what the feminine needs, as opposed to women have been mistreated, and now men need to be mistreated as a result.
Exactly. Which, how does that help anything?
the
right?
polarization again.
Right. So harmonization of that, and, you know, ideally with the land and the earth too, you know, that would be the most ideal. But we are definitely entering into new territory. And if we look at, you know, technological advancement, from irrigation to shipbuilding to, you know, trains to automobiles to planes, like all of this has changed how we experience the world and how we experience being human. And Pluto in Aquarius, and then obviously the internet, you know, the telephone, the radio, to, you know, all of the printing press in 1400, like all of these things have changed our experience, and we are set for another, with Pluto and Aquarius, I think, radical shift in how we integrate technology into our lives.
Right. Yeah. And we need that shift.
Yeah. Because if we're just in againstness, and that, you know, certain pocket of society needs to be that, again, all players on the stage, but being in againstness versus working with is a very different energy. And what is the tools are neutral. It's what we do with them. Right?
Absolutely.
So I remember Carolyn Mace once saying, listening to her articulate that once we came up with the atomic bomb, we, you know, it's like Prometheus, like we stole fire from the gods. And she argued that it accelerated human consciousness. Are we in another level of accelerating human consciousness, given the massive tools and weapons on all levels that we now possess?
Interesting thought. Okay, so if we're going to summarize what we're going to experience in 2025, how would we summarize that?
I would say it's a harmonization of the masculine and the feminine. So an integration, and really navigating how we work with our own mental processing and the actions we take based on those mental processing.
Great summarization. Okay. Brilliant. So, I mean, I think we've covered it then in terms of what we're expecting and what we need to look out for, and kind of on a quarter by quarter basis. So great. Thank you. And now read my whole chart and tell me what I need to do in 2026. 2025, sorry.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because you do have these eclipses that are going to be, you're a Pisces, so you're going to be impacted.
In a good or a bad way?
You know, it's so funny.
Don't talk about that. Good or bad. Don't do the whole binary thing. Yeah. Just tell me that it's going to be amazing for me, and my life is going to just be so wonderful because of it.
But what does wonderful mean, right? It's like, it's always,
it's just like a judgment.
Mill. Yeah, it's just grist for the mill. But it's always, you know, I created my undergrad thesis looking at history and looking at both, you know, really painting his, you know, as art and literature as a way to understand the moral zeitgeist of any given era. And I still, to this day, 20 years later, that is still basically the lens through which I see astrology express itself. So what stories are being told beyond institutional capture of storytelling? What stories are being told? And what does that say? Because usually it's ahead of the curve, right? So I just always look at it through that lens.
I love that. That kind of it really held through time. You know, that foresight that
I would have had no idea.
Yeah.
When I invented that major and wrote my thesis, that it would actually form the foundation of the work that I would do.
Amazing.
It's
Love
pretty
that.
wild.
Now let's get on to the important stuff. Favorite books of the year.
So what
this
are
is
my
where
favorite
you and
books?
I really thrive.
Totally. This year I have not read as much this year as I have in the past, which is funny because I didn't do as much traveling this year, but there was so much time focused on the home. But what are my favorite books? I thought James was excellent. So James is a retelling of Huck Finn.
Okay.
And I thought that was pretty brilliant. I actually think this came out the year before, but I read Heaven and Earth Grocery Store.
Oh my God, I loved it.
I think that's my favorite book I've read.
See, you and I are literally kindred spirits when it comes to literature.
And that book is so big-hearted.
Right?
So wonderful. So unbelievably wonderful.
I read it when I was on holiday in Spain in the summer. And I remember messaging my group of girlfriends and telling them, you all have to, and I kept going on about it every day. I was like, oh my God, this book, you've all got to I just loved everything about that book. And I know people who have read it and they've been like it was fine.
It's so vivid and so alive and like a beating heart. I also did love Sally Rooney's Intermezzo.
I didn't love it.
You didn't? I thought it was her most mature work, for sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm funny with Sally Rooney because when some of her books I will read and not connect with. And then Normal People, that was hers, right? I'm thinking. Yeah. When it was made into a TV program, I just thought it was the most incredible TV program. And obviously I'm missing something from the books because I'm just not reading it.
That show I thought was so much better than the novel.
Right, because I read that novel when I was traveling and I was like, I don't get it.
Same. I read that. I read all of her work, and this is the first novel where I felt real maturity and where I was really moved and I felt there was nuance, like real layered nuance. But Normal People, the show, I think it's one of the best shows of like.
It was brilliant. It was so beautifully acted and directed.
Incredible.
Yeah. Did you read Demon Copperhead?
That I read when it came out. That's the best book I've read in the past decade, hands down.
I mean, I knew you'd love that just based on the story and where it's set in America. And like, it should
be required reading for Americans. Literally. That book. That book should be required. Yeah.
It still stayed with me. I mean, I read it right at the beginning of this year and it has haunted me. Similarly to how A Little Life, which you and I both obsessed with, did, but it was more plot driven, obviously, than A Little Life. Less literary, more kind of plot driven, but haunting and heartbreaking and incredible and absolutely should be required reading.
It's extraordinary. I'm trying to think of what else I read.
Did you read Yellowface?
I didn't read Yellowface. Should I read it?
I think you'll like it. Yeah.
Okay.
It made me scared to be a writer, but yeah, it was brilliant. My mum didn't like it because I think like it was, it depends on the person, but I thought I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I read Intimacies.
Haven't read that.
It. And I like that. I don't know why I'm pulling there's a novel that I am not thinking of that I absolutely loved.
Okay. Did you read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow?
Yeah, love that, but I read it when it came out. So that was a few years. Love that novel.
I only read that this year. There was a funny one for me because I thought that the topic was brilliant because no one's ever done that before. Like video games, like who knew?
Yeah. And I had a whole new respect for video games after reading that novel.
I was like, maybe I'll let my kids play video games.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
On the nonfiction side?
I have not really read nonfiction this year. That is one of my goals for 2025. I really want to find a great Teddy Roosevelt biography. I'm very drawn to that period in history. They're building a library for him up in South Dakota, Snowetta is, and I want to get up there. I really I also, I want to read more historical biographies, interdisciplinary biographies, especially in American history. That's my goal.
Yeah.
But no, I read the 90s last year and loved it. Or was that this year? No, last year. This year went by so fast that I don't even know.
It's gone by so fast. I don't know what I read this year or last year as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. My nonfiction reading this year has been much more on the spiritual, esoteric side of things. I finally finished Tales of Power by Carlos Castaneda, which is stories about the shaman that I'm fortunate enough to work with. So that was amazing to really get into the last book of the series and understand like the depths of, true shamanism. And we read quite a lot of parenting books this year as well. Dr. Shafali, Gabor Mate, that side of stuff. Yeah. On the nonfiction, and also read Rest is Resistance, which I loved.
Oh.
And then I did like a 30-day Rest is Resistance #rest looks like little initiative on Instagram, because I just felt like, yes, I am being called to rest more, and I want to invite others to join me with that.
I love that. That's very Pisces in a way.
Is it?
That's like the surrender,
Oh yeah. And also being human design manifester, it's like do and make it all happen and bring everything together and then crash and then be like, I can't do it anymore. So that very, very true to my whole design and makeup. Yeah. Okay. Well, this was fun, as it usually is. And I think you've given us some great nuggets as usual.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. This is
of course.
I really look forward to this every year, and I know that my audience do too. And yeah.
And you made it to Sedona.
I made it to Sedona. It was just mind-blowing.
It's a pretty wild landscape, isn't it?
Do you know what? You're driving through. So first of all, not to mention I came from Colorado. So you've got the mountains, the incredible mountains and the snow and all of that. And then all of a sudden, it's not that far away. I mean, it's all relative, obviously, and then you're flying, and then all of a sudden you're flying over desert land in Arizona. And then I'm driving through Phoenix, and you're going through the Arizona desert, and all you see is like cactuses or cacti. I don't know. Cacti and dry and like dry shrubbery.
Did you drive through Seguro Desert, or is that? I think that might be more east of Sedona.
I have no idea, but my experience was just driving through this like dry desert of like cacti and dry shrubbery for hours, and out of nowhere emerges these red rocks, and you're like,
it's crazy. Or west, Seguro's west. Yes, it's
Mother
crazy.
Nature is magnificent.
Is it? This is the thing. You know how much I love America, but this is the thing that I think people don't realize who haven't spent time here, is how majestic the landscape is and how varied. Like, you can go to the Everglades in Florida and then go to Sedona and then go to the Pacific Northwest and see the redwoods. It's insane. Or go to, the Rockies and see these giant peaks. It's crazy.
Right. Which is what I always say to people. And I said to you like 4 years ago when you read my chart and you were like, oh yeah, you're going to end up in America. And I always say to people like, I have this calling because the land, and people are like, you want to live in America? And I'm like, no, but can we talk about the land and the landscape and like the majesty of it?
And the wildlife. Wildlife.
Yeah. It's just all magnificent.
It really is. I think people who haven't spent time in America and who haven't road tripped also don't understand how many small, vibrant towns there are across America that are being revitalized, that are, buildings that were built in the 1800s or early 1900s. There's this real revitalization happening across America in terms of the small towns, but amidst these like wild landscapes, it's just, it's interesting to me. I think people think either New York City, LA, and then strip malls. But there's
totally.
this
Which
whole
is the
other
opposite
thing
of what I've always wanted to experience. And, you know, when you told me that my Venus runs through kind of Tennessee-ish, North Carolina, which is where I said that I've always felt called to North Carolina. And you were like, shut up, your Venus runs through there. Could have run through like Mongolia or, you know, and that's where it runs through. So
it's wild.
like, which is so interesting because that's the kind of landscape that I feel called to. Like I love water, obviously as a Pisces, but not necessarily ocean, more like lakes and stuff like that. And just lots of nature and, you know, like I loved Colorado. I'm not sure I could live there just based on how dry it was.
It's very dry. My whole family's now there, and I spent a lot of time there, and a lot of time. And I'm always grateful to return to the soft earth and soft air of Tennessee.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The makeup artist, I said to the makeup artist at Gaia, I was like, my hair is so flat. What's happened? She was like, that's what, she's from Ireland as well. She's Irish. So she was like, babes, let me sort you out. She's like, you've got to redo your hair every day here because of the dryness. It just goes completely flat. And I was like, you know, I was like a drowned rat.
Totally.
Yeah, but I loved it. Thank you for asking.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much, my love. Always love
so much love to you. Thank you for having me. Have a beautiful evening.
You too. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reconditioned. I am honestly so grateful to each and every person that tunes in. Thank you also for taking responsibility for your own well-being. You should know that just by choosing to listen to podcasts like this that further your well-being, you're moving more deeply into abundance consciousness. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of free resources over at laurenvakneen.co.uk, as well as every recommendation you could ever need in regards to your well-being on the LV Recommends page, all categorized for your ease. Thank you also to our sponsors. These episodes would not be possible without them, so make sure to check them out and get some pretty awesome discounts on the show notes. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get updated each time a new one is released. Thank you. I appreciate you.